But I think the real problem for Indian IT is not exactly coming from
Yeah.
the tariff.
So then that's the second topic we are entering in.
AI disruption is real. It's like driving a car, right? Objects in the rear
Rare.
or rear mirror or nearer than you expected or whatever. It is near and it's real. Capabilities of entry level engineer, you probably expect them to know basics of scripting, basics of coding, right? Maybe you will. What type of job would you give them? Maybe I would probably give them to build a say CI/CD pipeline, right? Probably that's like an entry point. You don't need really junior engineer to build a closed loop automation, which is very simple. Agentic AI can do that for you,
I think you are
right?
still giving a tougher job to them by giving CSA. Maybe I'll give an HTML to start.
I think any grad engineer who is probably pursuing his or her third or fourth year of engineering now should try to look at what are the relevant skills for the industry.
How do they know? That is the biggest challenge, right? Let's say even when we were more maybe at college, we never knew how the industry was working. Coming to the second topic, which is a giant among this, which is AI, I guess that's what you're pointing to, right?
Exactly, yeah. AI disruption is real. I think it is. It's like driving a car, right? You see that objects in the rear
Rare.
or rear mirror or nearer than you expected or whatever. Uh, it is near and it's real, and I think we can already see the impacts of it. Um,
Immediate question: how is hiring changing because of this? Are you what are you seeing when, let's say, even personally, when you're looking to hire somebody now, what are you looking really for, like from the candidate?
yeah, I think one thing we have changed is, in fact, the skills remain the same, right? And I think, and not everybody is AI ready. Right? They can't be. I mean, at the moment, I think where there is really
What do
the,
you mean by that? Not everyone is AI ready.
I mean, if for example, if I'm hiring a full stack developer today, um, he probably has worked in front end, back end, and database, right? And not necessarily used AI tools to build the software.
You mean all the co-pilots
Yeah, I mean that's
or
all we look at. I mean,
Gemini?
we are not looking at. See, it's like this, right? There are different roles which require specific parts of the AI, because AI is this huge ocean,
Yeah.
right? Where there are parts to it. There is a machine learning aspect. There's a data aspect where we need data scientists. We need data engineers, right? We need database engineers. We did data analyst. That itself is a big field, right? Then you actually need engineers who can understand and build the models, the ML part of it, machine learning, train the models, keep making sure that the ML is actually relevant, so that you don't have the problem of garbage in, garbage out, right? We need that kind of skill set. And you also need the people who actually can, like I said, develop software using the AI tools, Gen AI and all the stuff. At the moment, we are not. I mean, we are not really in the business of building a platform. Right? We are not building a platform, AI platform itself. We are looking at skill sets where people have actually either used the AI tools
Yeah.
such as Cursor or Copilot, GitHub Copilot and stuff like that, and they've actually made their coding much more efficient using such tools, right? That's what we are looking at. And the other side, we have certain rules where we really want people to understand how LLMs operate, how to actually really make sure we build closed loop automation using the ML and AI. That's another aspect that we are looking at. And there, of course, we need some people actually who really are data oriented. We need, like I said, we don't need data scientists as such too many,
That's a risk.
because
Already they are the ones who are at the maximum risk, is what
correct.
I hear. Yeah.
That's true. I mean, because so much of tools are available for you to now decide and process. You don't really need data science to really design you what kind of data you'll be
But is
looking
that
at.
really happening? That that job or that job description is redundant now?
I wouldn't say it's redundant. I think what's happening is that there are two kinds of people coming together to model the AI requirements of a company, right? For example, in my company, which is a telecom based company, right? Telecom operator, we actually need the domain experts, right? And then the ML or the data experts, right? Who can build the models
Yeah.
basically based on the input given by the domain specific experts. So basically, when these two people come together, they're the ones who are going to build the model.
Who's this domain expert? Is it not your product manager who knows the domain?
I mean, product managers probably are. I mean, it's like this, right? Domain experts are somebody who actually knows how the business works
Hmm.
and how exactly each product operates. What is the way? What is the tech stack? Even it has to be very technical. This domain expert is a very technical role
Hmm.
who understands on one side how the business operates, what are the different business logic involved in the product,
Hmm.
and the other side also understand the tech stack, what is involved, how the implementation is done for the particular product as well. So it's hard to find such a role, but these are the people who probably have spent 15 or 20 years in the companies or various industries, getting very strong domain knowledge. For example, telecom, right? When you
Yeah.
talk about telecom, a domain expert is somebody who knows how 4G to 5G transition has to happen, how would actually 5G to 6G transition happen. At the same time, also understand how the complex network operates, what are the different protocols that are actually in use in a telecom network, and what is the real use case. The business case for an AI implementation in a telecom company would be like network assurance, right?
Hmm.
How do you make sure that the network is available 99.99% of the time using ML and AI, which is autonomous, right? Autonomous networks.
Hmm.
For that to happen, the domain expert comes in and gives his inputs as to what specific parameters to look at, what specific parameters to tune. For example, in the radio, what parameters to optimize so that the call drops are minimal and so on. We need such experts more. So these experts, actually domain experts, feed this information into the data engineers and ML engineers who actually build the models, right, and
That
fine
is
tune the
what
models.
is going away, like that part, and then directly models are right away available, right?
That's what I'm saying. So I think LLMs are available,
Hmm.
but not specific to domain. To be honest, if I use a
So it's
LLM, which is
garbage right now,
exactly
like you said.
as of now, what's going to happen? Maybe in future, maybe after 10 years of doing such a role, the domain experts actually probably don't need to do that part of the job. But right now, they are very important.
But you're giving them 10 years. Is that really how it is evolving, or?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Maybe it's 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
Definitely not before 5 years, I would say,
Hmm.
because it's very complex. I think that's where I think industry to industry there will be a difference in how fast we can get to
Yeah.
a proper autonomous way of working. Uh, and like I said, I think human interaction. I believe that even after 5 years, it's very important because to tune the models that you have built to make sure the model is relevant, because at one time, I mean, at one side the tech stack is evolving, the ML and AI tech is going to evolve, right? It's always going to evolve. It's always going to be better ways of building, better new databases coming in. uh, Today you have grab database to correlate and make sure you build the relationships. Tomorrow there might be something else and so on.
Hmm.
So one part of it, tech is also evolving. At the same time, domain also keeps evolving. So basically, today you have 5G, tomorrow you have 6G. How telecom network is built and operated always also keeps evolving. That's why domain experts will not cease to exist, right?
Yeah.
Because they, like, even in banking, for example, there might be new products which the banking keeps coming up with, right? You need still the domain experts, banking or insurance experts, to really feed into the ML as an input, so
Yeah.
that the you get the best out of the whole implementation. So I
So
don't believe such roles will go away.
yeah. So
Yeah.
domain expert as such, like the parallel is again a product manager, could be even a head of product or somebody who knows what the domain
No,
is,
I
right?
think it's little more than that. I think at a working level, if I look at a domain, like I said,
Hmm.
for me, a domain expert in telecom
Hmm.
is somebody who understands the network, the complex network, different parts of the network, and he could be, in his previous life, he could have been an operations engineer or
Hmm.
even a developer as well. These are the people who actually I'm calling as domain
Oh,
experts.
so maybe
Not
in
exactly because product managers, what they do is they know how a product is assembled probably,
hmm.
but largely they are focused on use cases, right?
Yeah.
What are the use cases a product solves, and they actually are look more of interface into customer, and they understand the customer needs and they build a product.
Yeah.
But how a product operates, what is the data actually which drives the product, what are the different KPIs that are important for the product, even any product, for even for the product, a banking product or a loan product or insurance product, right?
Hmm.
Any channels which actually makes you money, obviously you need the very specific details to be known. And that's where
Okay.
I believe that and like I said, in some domains there could be an overlap, maybe in a domain called such as banking, there might be actually a overlap between a product manager and a domain expert to some extent. But in very technology focused domains like telecom,
Yeah,
you will
that's
probably
why I
need
think there is a difference here, maybe in terms of what domain here is
yes,
compared to, let's say, I'm coming from automotive. It's totally different. So
yeah.
there, let's say, all the business intelligence can be with, let's say, the domain. Whoever understands the domain, he wants to maybe run an analytics to see, maybe that's where I feel, oh, data scientist, again, I don't know, because I'm not really closely working with those guys. But whatever I'm hearing as such is that the first risk, wherever a job description, um, where this title can go away, is the data scientist, where AI is maybe disrupting there. Other side, where I'm already knowing, which is the QA, let's say, whoever is doing automation, wherever you see automation, that's getting rid of.
I think entry level engineers in general are in a bit of a risk, right?
Yeah.
In fact, today it's already real, right? The capabilities of entry level engineer, for example, when you hire a grad from an engineering college in India,
Mm.
you probably expect them to know basics of scripting, basics of coding, right? Maybe you will, what type of job would you give them? Maybe I would probably give them to build a, say, CI/CD pipeline, right? Probably that's like an entry point.
Mm.
You no longer need engineers to basically take care of a CI/CD pipeline and build them. You don't need really junior engineer to build a closed loop automation, which is very simple. Agentic AI can do that for you,
I think you are
right?
still giving a tougher job to them by giving CI/CD. Maybe I'll give an HTML to start with.
Probably.
Yeah.
And even that's what I'm saying. Even that, right? I think how do you really leverage what job can I give them, which actually really kind of can make me get the best bang for a buck for
Mm.
from a grad engineer now is really diminishing, right? I think more or less I'm getting diminishing returns now from a grad engineer
Mm.
in
And
India.
that's the biggest risk an entry level engineer might be feeling. I don't know whether they are even aware, but this is the real use case right now. Maybe some of the, let's say, an example is somebody writing their code, they are not writing their unit test, so they might delegate it to an engineer who is junior. You now
Right.
start writing every
Yeah.
unit test which is needed,
Yeah,
right?
basically show them the ropes, right? You
Yeah.
actually handhold them and you actually used to give them certain small models to code and maybe test it. Maybe you would give them models which you already coded,
Yeah.
which they can probably do a pair programming and so on. But nowadays, those are all becoming redundant.
So that's the first. Maybe we'll come to, or do you see any hope for them already as
Yeah, I
an
think
entry?
it's.
What do they really need to do?
I think any grad engineer today is not industry ready,
Hmm.
at least in India. I kind of, and I think most of the countries it would probably be same
When you say
because
industry ready, that means they come in, start delivering value. Is that
yeah, I
what you're
mean,
looking
at
for?
least the time required today for me, like I can talk about telecom because it's my domain, right? When we actually hire from campus interviews today in India, we bring a batch of 20 or 30 every year in a particular project, right?
Hmm.
And then you need to spend at least 6 months to 8 months with them to train them. When I even hire a telecom or electronics or a computer science engineer, the skills they bring to the table in what I need for telecom, even a telecom, believe me, even a telecom engineering graduate in India does not have even the basic networking skills that are required for a company, for a telecom company which operates at this scale.
Hmm.
They have very theoretical knowledge. They have like bookish knowledge, and most of them actually just focus on some school projects or certain library projects or Shopify projects in their programming curriculum in the it might have changed to an extent, but still it's not enough. What I'm trying to say is that I need 6 months to 8 months before a grad engineer can be at least deployed in one of the projects where he starts adding little bit of value.
Hmm.
So even if you look at how a graduate engineer is built, the first year they have only built 50% of the value, and then they start actually getting built maybe after the second year or third year. So if actually I'm going to wait for 2 to 3 years to really get the best out of a grad engineer, then I mean there are exceptions, of course. If
Yeah, yeah, I have
there
seen a
are
lot
some
of
people who
exceptions.
really are smart graduates. They know what to learn. They're very curious. They're very,
But you're no talking more about the majority. You're
yeah.
the cream layer always survives.
Cream Live always serves anywhere they go, and I think and it doesn't matter if, because I have actually hired engineers from IITs and VITs and SITs and all the IT
Yeah.
companies in India, and believe me, there is no direct relationship between the university they have
Yeah.
passed or graduated from to the actual skills that they bring to the table as a grad engineer. It's all about the individual. It's all, of course, the brand name might get them a job faster,
Mm.
but being inquisitive and ability to learn things which are really relevant is actually something the individual's choice. I think any grad engineer who is probably pursuing his or her third or fourth year of engineering now should try to look at what are the relevant skills for the industry, because our curriculum doesn't do that.
But how do they know? That is the biggest challenge, right? Let's say even when we were more maybe at college, we never knew how the industry was working.
That's a very good point. I think
Yeah.
that's where I think the university should focus on industry connects. I think they are not doing it to a large extent. So
Mm.
they should invite industry leaders to basically come and talk to the people, talk to the engineering graduates, and make sure they get that relevant knowledge. In fact, instead of focusing on the curriculum alone, which is defined by the university to clear the graduation, they should focus more on the real life skills which are really required.
Mm.
And that's where I think even the universities can collaborate with industries, like specific industry like telecom, energy, whichever sector, right, banking, insurance, and so on, and get the relevant skill sets which are required and make it as part of the curriculum. Because unless you do that, what's going to happen is they're always going to be, and it's not just me, right, everybody actually are saying the same thing, that the employability of India engineering grad in India is quite low because they're not industry ready. And I blame mostly at this point the curriculum which most of the Indian engineering universities have adopted. They need to be a little more
Yeah,
futuristic.
but I think that there lies the problem with why it's not happening. First thing, it's because what is the incentive of a company coming in and tying up with an university? Um, that's where I think government has a role to play, right? Because if
You're
they
right.
don't incentivize
They
the
need to look at,
companies,
yeah, they need to protect the interest of, I mean, in fact, if you look at what government is trying to protect now, is still our natural resources,
yeah,
the mining, and everything, right? But Indian IT is a gold mine as well. It has been a gold mine for many years now, and it is an asset which the government has to protect. So I think they need to really seriously look at improving the curriculum, making it industry ready, the engineering curriculum, as well as the universities themselves need to actually have these industry connects, right?
mm,
Because and I think that level of, again, the flip side of it is there are so many engineering colleges now in India. Will all the colleges be able to do it? I don't think so, right?
yeah,
But at least the majority of the colleges which are actually in the top 100 or top 200 at least needs to make sure that they have good industry connects. They already have funding, good funding from their parent organizations, right? Whoever is running the universities, they should have industry connects. Make sure they bring them for debates and talks, so the engineering graduates actually get a sense of what is really required for me to be industry ready. And of course there are very smart people who actually are do come through the ranks, and I think we spoke about exceptions, right? Some engineering graduates at third year, they say to start some companies and they start to become entrepreneurs and so on. There are exceptions, but we're of course
yeah. I
talking about
have
the
seen a lot
large
of
majority.
exceptions, but then again, that is limited to those individuals
Yeah, it's
who
just
are
an
highly
individual.
motivated
Exactly.
and has
Exactly.
this right skill set. But again, coming back, I think maybe it's above my pay grade to know it, or maybe I'm unaware. But again, industry connects are happening with colleges, even in our company. But I'm wondering whether it is well incentivized by the government too, that okay, you get a tax rebate or you
It's
get
not, as of now
something.
it's not. I think, yeah, like I said, that's what government probably has to
Yeah,
bring in a change. I think government has to look at the IT sector as a gold mine. They have to protect the interests. They have to make sure we don't really fall into a situation where 50% of the engineering grads don't get jobs. It
yeah,
might be already getting there. I think most of the engineering grads now are suffering. In fact, companies are finding innovative ways of cutting down on grads. We
I
recently heard companies actually who are uh, tracking their performance and making sure that they're trimming the graduates, right? The
Mm.
graduate intake, and people who are already ahead also are getting pink slips
Yeah, I
as well.
think most of the in India youth is on creating reels, or maybe that's where the most
I
of
would
the
probably
time.
not generalize it, but I would say I think we have become complacent, right? I believe somehow the problem also might lie in complacency as well. Overall, I think we have probably started thinking that Indian IT industry is more or less, um, you know, very resilient, and we probably will not be um, getting into such a problem, or getting into a situation where we might see a lot of um, layoffs and mass layoffs and stuff like that. But it's already happening in sectors, right?
Yeah,
I think
I'm not demeaning whoever is creating reels or TikTok. What I'm saying is that has also opened up an industry on its own, because the first
you're talking
first
about Gen Z in particular.
first podcast that I had was with a couple of influencers who have tapped into that market.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is it has opened up something, but without, if let's say we don't kill the IT, it's not limited to maybe the companies. It's also maybe there is some kind of support even needed from government, maybe before it can evolve from here
Yeah.
where it stands right now.
And I
Okay.
believe that, grads, like I said, to be honest, if you are going to be an engineering grad in the next 5 to 10 years, unless you're industry ready, you're going to be, it's going to be very difficult for
Mm,
even if you look at the hiring graph of grads, even in my company, it is actually decreasing.
mm.
Most of the companies are going to cut back on grad hiring
Is
just
that
because
is that really okay? I am also seeing that, but is that cutback happening because of the current financial situation, or is just is that has it got to anything to do with AI right now?
it's a mix of both, I guess, because at on one side, I think companies are trying to see how they can optimize their costs,
Mm,
right? Optimize their in fact, there are so many engineers now in many companies who actually are kind of, the productivity they have is quite lesser, because
mm,
they have reached a stage where, if you just look at a Java engineer,
mm.
right? A Java engineer or Java programmer who is probably 5 years experience, with 5 years experience, right? And when you compare it to the 15 years Java developer, both these developers now, if you look at what was actually, what did the 15-year Java developer have before, which a 5-year experience developer did not have? It was basically the experience, right? And
Expertise
obviously
on.
the expertise and the right tools to use,
Yeah.
and the right architecture and the system design and the design patterns, which actually probably a junior engineer probably did not possess, is what a senior developer had.
Mm,
But now access to these, the gap is now bridged using the Gen AI and the tools which are available,
mm,
right? So now already companies are facing a problem of plenty, wherein they have all these engineers who are very experienced, but they're not giving the bang for the buck, which probably the profitability of a company now can be much more if I just hire like 5 to 8 years experienced engineers, rather than having uh, 15 or a 14 years experienced engineer.
yeah.
And that's where I think, when there are so many engineers already, why, for example, a big company like Infosys or a TCS or a Wipro, which used to be like the companies where bulk of the hiring used to happen in Indian IT, right? The service companies, the old service companies that um, we had from 1980s. Even in those companies, they have a problem of plenty already. Now, what value a grad can offer now actually is very debatable now, because on one side, like you said, AI is actually come in. It started doing all the entry level, and there is obviously, if you look at all the latest research which is being done,
Mm,
it is much cheaper to employ Gen AI to build certain entry level software modules, rather than
mm.
hiring a software junior software engineer himself.
But that has not come out so well from, let's say, even organizations, because um, are you hearing that okay, let's do more with what we have? Let's say nobody's saying, at least now, that let's do more with less. That means cut down on the number of people that we have. Nobody's saying that, but wherever I'm hearing, not at least it within my company, but whatever I'm hearing is, let's do more with whatever we have right now without going flat. That means we will remain flat for maybe the number of years going forward, but we will not hire, but but deliver more using AI. Are you hearing that, or
I think definitely there is layoffs which are already happening
because of AI,
because of AI.
but not in large org, or is it happening?
Probably it is probably not as, and there will be an inflection point at some point of time. What's going to happen is, today we are at a crossroads, right? And we are at an inflection point where the tasks which AI can actually replace humans
Hmm.
probably actually are probably 20% or 15%, right? But at this point, and maybe in 2 or 3 years in future, it all depends on how AI evolves, right?
Hmm.
For example, you look at, like I said, you don't need a DevOps engineer now, right? You have CI/CD pipelines, everything actually automated.
Yeah.
You have hyper automation on one side. You don't need an engineer to really monitor and see whether the build is completed, where deployment is completed, and stuff like that. Everything is getting autonomous,
Hmm.
right? And on the other side, actually, you have um, if you look at people actually like the network operations engineer or somebody whose only job was to keep monitoring the network
Yeah.
overnight, doing upgrades overnight, support, right? In fact, bulk of the IT hiring in India actually was also actually to do support roles, right? Tech support
Yeah.
and do the level 3 support and all those stuff, level 2 support, at least level 1, level 2. Level 1, level 2 is going to be replaced very soon with AI
Hmm.
in bulk, right? It means that you don't need people to support your upgrades, you monitor your networks, make sure that actually you actually have, because you're going to build in that AI is going to build in that mechanism for you to make sure you address that resiliency and redundancy, right? Your n plus 1 and n plus n kind of a redundancy is going to be built in now.
Hmm.
And using AI, you're going to eliminate all those support roles anyways. So I think there is going to be a point maybe in 2 to 3 years in the future where you might see much more larger layoffs, and the layoffs actually are going to happen mostly in the roles which actually you cannot upskill to something else. For example, if I look at a support engineer, right? A support engineer's role, if it's going to be replaced by AI, what else would you, if a support engineer has probably spent 10, 15 years of his life in only mastering the art of
Yeah. That.
supporting specific issues and monitoring certain KPIs and network. Obviously, actually, if he cannot actually become a developer, he cannot become a domain expert. Maybe in some ways, some people can become domain experts. But what I'm saying is, there will be roles which actually will be replaced completely, and you will see a big fall
Hmm.
in number of roles which are really required to run a company. There might be mass layoffs as well happening if they cannot upskill. And I think, unfortunately or fortunately, the people who are going to be most impacted on are both sides of the spectrum, right? I think the people who actually are on the middle sweet spot are good. People who actually maybe are the 5 plus years experienced people are probably are going to be able to evolve and adapt AI tools and technologies and maybe upskill themselves,
Hmm.
and maybe probably up to say 15 years, 16 years, maybe, right? Maybe the 20, 25 plus years experienced engineers, maybe you don't need them as well. These people might be impacted, and also the graduate engineers, like we already talked about,
Hmm.
might also be impacted.
But at one point, you still need somebody who needs to still work with AI, right? Without, if you don't have graduate engineers coming in, then what will the next generation look like?
I know that's what I was. It's very difficult to assess right now.
Hmm.
What will be the actual impact of the AI? Like I said, the inflection point. How hard it's going to fall? The graph, is it going to fall gradually? Where maybe for the next 10, 12 years, actually we stabilize
Hmm.
the AI and then we actually start seeing the impact, or it's very immediate, right? And I have a feeling that it might be very immediate after 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think the I'm not saying we don't need graduates. I think that would be foolish to not have graduates, right? You need your succession plans. You need the company to really have young people come in and show their skills and capabilities and take the companies forward. At the same time, would I need to hire 800 or 1,000 graduates every year? No.
Hmm.
I think that's where actually things are going to change, right? Because the volume of hiring in each IT company in India is going to reduce drastically, and that's going to impact the jobs for the grads. Right? And that's what I said, the cream of the cream who actually are going to be very industry ready, are going to keep themselves relevant, are going to obviously succeed. But at the same time, if there's an engineering graduate who is probably not industry relevant, is probably
Means
not
they
going
will
to.
have a huge learning curve, will not
Yes.
have a value addition right away.
Yes, and we're already seeing the interviews also becoming very, very tougher and tougher for grads, right?
Mm.
When I remember when we were grads, we were looking out for jobs in early 2003 and rather late 2003 and that period. All these big companies used to hire in bulk.
Yeah.
Every year there used to be like hundreds of thousand people were hired and put into these training centers and all the stuff. I think that is going to go away, and that's fair. But
Mm.
the engineering, the desire to become an engineer hasn't reduced, right? Even with all this, I think.
I think that will come down once they see the impact of what is really going to happen,
Correct.
because even now there is no visibility. Everyone knows the AI is disrupting, but there is no tangible evidence of where it has happened.
Yeah, I think that's you're right, and that's where we need to wait for maybe like 2 to 3 years to see the actual impact. Like I said, in circles it is happening, in certain domains it is happening, but again it's like this, right? As of today, can a US company
Mm.
which outsources heavily to India, for like let's take Walmart, right? It's a good example. Walmart is a huge supermarket in US which actually does tons and tons of outsourcing to Indian IT companies, right? Um, but again, it's not a tech company,
Mm.
right? Walmart is not. I mean,
Yeah.
you can argue that because they do have certain R&D centers and all that stuff, but their DNA is not exactly of a tech company. Amazon now you can tell they're a tech company
Yeah,
because
they are.
they are actually diversified into so many different things. But in general, the core of the IT outsourcing business which comes, the clients or the customers are not very tech savvy. Can
Mm.
they manage a complete AI based autonomous software system themselves? No, they still would need to actually outsource it to somebody who really can take care of it, right?
Mm.
So there's the return on investment for them also, they are not very clear yet. On one side, there are these two-dimensional consultants like Steve Jobs. I really like Steve Jobs, right? The
Mm.
way a management consultant, nowadays there are IT consultants who actually take clients through the digitization process, right? They want to digitize certain industries,
Mm.
and they actually, when they actually meet the clients, right, they're going to offer them ideas to make them fully digitized using AI and make sure that they can cut down on their expenses and all. But like Steve Jobs says, a consultant is like looking at an image, right? It's like a
Mm.
2D image, and you're only looking at the image and saying, "Yep, this is how it's going to work. It's going to be very nice and beautiful, and AI is going to solve all your problems." But a client actually might look at it and say, "Okay." But if the client is really smart, they're obviously going to look at the three-dimensional aspect, how it's going to be implemented, how it's going to be operated,
Mm.
right? Who's going to actually take care of it when shit hits the fan, when there is a real outage, what happens,
Yeah.
right? All those things, obviously, your consultant is not going to solve for you. That's where I think that they are really worried, right? Even though there is a push for large-scale companies, non-IT companies who are dependent on IT companies to make their business running, to make it fully autonomous. They're still not very
Convinced.
convinced,
Yeah,
and the return on
because
investment is also because the initial investment is huge, right? If you want to become a complete if you want to be a complete AI based company, which is probably have a very minuscule staff to run the whole systems, right? The initial investment is also very heavy for that
mm.
because AI doesn't come cheap, right? Especially
Mm.
if you're actually going to use cloud technologies, if you're going to store a lot of data in the cloud, it is all expensive at this moment.
But as soon as they optimize the cost part, like how DeepSeek is doing it,
Hmm.
then it can lead to faster
It could,
disruption, right?
it
Yeah.
could, and that's what probably will happen, and it might happen. I hope it happens more gradually, so that we do get time to kind of plan a
Survive.
strategy and make sure we survive for
Yeah.
some more time. But if it does happen very fast, then of course we need to really be running around to figure out how do we manage this, right? Because
Mm.
if 50% of the roles can be achieved by using AI, then we have a problem in Indian IT industry, of
Mm.
course.
Yeah. And one big, even I was reading through something where one interesting aspect which is evolving is we now have job descriptions
Hmm.
which clearly says what and a person has to do with this title. He's coming in with maybe a specific skill set. Whatever I'm hearing is this is going away because you don't really need jobs. You need to do task, which is a combination of different jobs, right? So
That's interesting.
with that, oh, individuals, it's more like a generalized skill now. You need to know everything to complete a task. You cannot be
You're
with a
right. Yeah.
specific
I think that's right. And that's where I think I would like to probably modify the definition of a full stack engineer, right?
yeah,
For me, a full stack engineer, I think, is traditionally what is a full stack engineer? We actually define somebody who can do front end development, back end development, database,
yeah,
and all those stuff, right? But for me, if I'm hiring an engineer now, what I mean by full stack is he needs to understand the business.
mm,
He needs to understand what kind of products we build. He needs to understand the business logic, and then actually also actually build me software,
yeah.
which is going to actually deliver my product. And that's where I think, and of course, validate it and all the stuff, right? Because I think, like we discussed before, I think the QA team is also actually going to be quite minuscule now.
There is no QA needed with
We can't,
maybe
the QA is not needed, but yes, it's going to reduce it. We don't need probably like a 50-member QA team, but we
even
still need
that
QA.
becomes more like a job. Whoever is doing that should also be doing QA,
Exactly.
maybe, right?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. The full stack engineer is going to take,
Yeah,
maybe if I have like 50 of these full stack engineers in the company, maybe I don't need to have like large team. Before, if you remember,
yeah,
we used to have a 100 member development team, 50 member QA team.
yeah.
Then you have a 10-member deployment team, DevOps team,
And
and so
QA
on. And they'll
coming
have
in.
actually production support. We'll have a lot of things, right? And slowly, what was happening is it was always left shifting.
Yeah,
Initially, we called a developer an operations engineer, right? Then we actually moved the operation to the left and you're a DevOps engineer because I don't want people who actually develop code and in production somebody else operates it
yeah,
and somebody else manages the bugs and everything. Now we moved operations together. We said DevOps engineer. Now we moved security also inside. Now we started calling them DevSecOps engineer because we don't want somebody else to do a security, right? You are building the code. You should know how to get rid of vulnerabilities, how to make sure your code is secure and safe. So security is one aspect. So we had started having DevSecOps engineer. Now what we are also saying is, you know what? We don't need tech BAs or tech business analysts to come and define what you need to build, right? Traditionally, how it used to happen, we have product managers or product owners. You used to say, this is my product, this is my acceptance criteria, and if you give these 4 or 5 details to 4 or 5 use cases to the developer, he wouldn't understand it. He or
okay.
she wouldn't understand it. There used to be this middleman called tech BAs, business analysts, used to write user stories, right?
Oh, okay, that's new for
Which
me.
always actually, according to me, was a kind of redundant role, but it is what it is, right? They actually used to take these inputs from the product managers, distill that, and create user stories, which could be understood by the actual developer, right? Because he is not really an expert in domain. He's going to say, okay, now I understand what I have to code. Then he codes that. Somebody else tests it. Somebody else operates in. Somebody applies security on top of it. Somebody else operates in production. Now all this we are combining into one. Right? We are saying
Yeah,
dev, biz, sec, ops. It means you also understand the business side of it. You need to understand the domain, the use cases. You need to understand how does a different transactions happen in a banking system. I don't want you to just go and tell, you know what, uh, write exactly what happens when a transaction in ATM fails. I want you to understand what all actually happens and then code accordingly, right?
so you need to really know the domain too.
Exactly. That's what actually is going. Is we are seeing the trend, and that's what needs to happen, right?
Yeah, and
And
that's what is evolving as, like I said, the
exactly,
product engineer
exactly.
who does end to end. Like you can call it DevOps seek
Whatever you
engineer.
want.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's basically he's a for me it's a full stack engineer,
yeah.
and for me the definition of full stack has to change.
Single accountability. Like
Yes,
anything, let's say security fails, you don't really need to go to that department asking what went wrong.
exactly.
It's all encompassing within the same.
Correct. And some might actually tell that, a Java developer might come and say this is too much
Yeah,
for me. You know what? I'm a Java developer.
I
There
don't
is
care about
actually
quality.
there is cursor in GitHub Copilot which is building what you could build. What you would take 1 week to build, I'm getting it in 1 hour, right? So unless you are a full stack engineer based on our definition of full stack engineer, I don't see value in having just a Java developer who needs like four people to operate,
Yeah.
right? If you need a tech BA to write you the use cases or user stories, and you need somebody to validate your code, somebody to apply security on your code, and you need somebody in production support to manage your code, then it means your value is already diminished for me.
Hmm. So is that how hiring is happening now? You are
I think
defining.
largely it is happening, and I think it will continue to as AI progresses further, right? Where companies will start looking at actual valuable engineers.
Hmm.
Where do I get best value from? Is somebody who can really tie together everything.
Yeah.
Use AI, Gen AI, to build smart code and efficient code, of course. At the same time, actually reduce my footprint of resource required as well. If I'm investing, because AI doesn't come cheap, right? If a company is investing in Cursor or GitHub Copilot or any other thing like ChatGPT, whatever it might be, if they're investing in the licensed versions of any of these tools, it doesn't come cheap.
Yeah,
It
but
means
it
there is an
comes cheaper
investment.
than one engineer for sure per year.
Correct. I mean, obviously, it depends on how you license it and what is the
Hmm.
capabilities of the particular license you are buying.
Hmm.
But still, you would want to make best use of it. And at the same time, like we discussed, you want to basically optimize your workforce, and
Hmm.
the only way to do it is actually having less number of engineers doing one engineer doing more tasks. Obviously, is more valuable than having multiple engineers doing specific tasks.
Yeah.
And I think that's going away very soon. I think we might see that, especially in my domain, telecom, which we're seeing. It's very hard for me to now hire a Java developer.
But for even before that to happen, the organization will have to define specifically the roles and
Yes,
responsibilities designation specific to this, right? Because
specifically.
currently it might be like I need a backend developer which is clearly defined within my org chart, let's say. So is it not an organization structural change
It
itself
will it will happen, and I
which
think
is going to
that's
lead?
absolutely. I think that's a very interesting observation you have. Every company is already undergoing a rigorous resource review at this point,
Hmm.
right? And resourcing strategy as well.
I think it's beyond my pay scale too. That's why I'm not
Every
seeing it.
company is doing, even in my company, we are doing a resourcing strategy and a
Hmm.
resource review to understand what do we really need in the next, not just today and tomorrow, the next 4 to 5 years or even beyond 5 years.
Hmm.
What are the kind of role that we really need?
Hmm.
And we are obviously taking into account the impact of AI and ML into it. And then how do we actually go become autonomous, right? And what kind of engineers we need to operate the network and to maintain the network and to obviously build products and build features. We are looking at whole resourcing, the pool of resource we have, and we are fine tuning it.
Hmm.
And that's happening. I'm sure it's happening industry wide,
Should
because
be.
that is something which will actually, like we discussed, right? That will obviously impact the people who cannot obviously upskill. So one thing we are already doing is to make sure we identify resources who we know for sure cannot upskill to what we need, right? Obviously, this kind of resource will obviously would be actually kind of made redundant at some point.
Hmm.
It could be 2 years, it could be before that. That's going to happen anyways.
Yeah, even I think AI is also exposing people's skill sets because you are always under the radar behind
Yes.
within the team. But as soon as let's say you're bringing AI in front, like I'm specifically talking about Gen AI, and then you're asking the tool to be used. Even with that, if let's say the quality is not improving, that means like you said, garbage in, garbage out is what you will get. So
Yep.
that even technical skill set is questioned sometimes because if you know what you're asking, it will give you the right answers. So
Yep. Absolutely.
that's where I think even it is exposing a lot of people's skill set too.
Correct. I mean, there used to be a lot of developers, like you said, who used to hide under the radar,
Yeah.
fly under the radar rather, because not all. Unfortunately, it's also a product of agile at the moment.
Hmm.
How we actually operate in agile, and I'll tell you, agile has been paradigm
Hijacked,
or
huh?
a process, or whatever you want to call it, a skill, a platform, or whatever. Agile is something which is misused a lot by most of the companies,
Yeah.
and there are roles which are defined which make no sense at all. right?
It was made for engineers, developers to
Exactly, to
begin with.
build code faster, to
Yeah.
deploy faster, to test fast, fail fast, fix fast, make sure actually then you can build iterative,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Building iterative was the whole point of doing agile. But now actually unfortunately there are so many buffers added into agile, like we discuss about scrum master, we discuss about tech BAs, and whenever you do the sprint planning and stuff like that, there are people who probably don't even understand the actual technicalities of it, and a developer could usually come and say, you know what, this is like 5 story points,
Mm.
and one story point maybe 8 hours or whatever, whereas the actual implementation might be like
1 hour.
maybe 1 hour, a couple of hours.
I know that.
And that was the flip side to agile, right? The whole point of agile was to build iteratively, build faster and deploy faster,
Mm.
fix faster. But unfortunately the companies have not implemented agile in the right way, and this was, these kind of developers obviously are not gonna now gonna get caught, like you said. Obviously AI is gonna probably produce code which is, again, we have to obviously understand that AI is not magic, right?
Mm.
It's not like AI is going to replace a software engineer completely. A very good software engineer
Mm.
is one, a post AI world software engineer or a developer is one who understands how to make best use of the AI and where to use it, right? Obviously, he needs to know what is the best way to solution his product, right? He needs to know what are the best tools, what is the tech stack to use. AI can recommend for you. It can say instead of using MongoDB, use CosmoDB or whatever, right? But it's up to your, right? Your knowledge and your experience might decide that okay, this is the best tech stack. A software engineer is going to be successful post AI if he
Mm.
knows what is the best solution. He who actually has knowledge of the complex integrations,
Yeah.
right? And then he knows how to make best use of the Gen AI tools to generate algorithms or modules which he knows are typically taking time to implement actually using AI and basically include in his code, right, in his project. That's the best use of AI right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, Gen AI is not something which understands your business logic. You
That's
can't
where
go to
you need
AI
to
and
give
say
more and more context of what you really need. Only then it will
exactly.
give you.
You can't go to say for example Cursor or GitHub Copilot and say, you know what, this is my use case, one line use case. Go and build me the complete product for this, a complete software for this. So a software engineer who is going to probably use AI to replace himself is already at risk, right? So
Yeah, I mean that's happening, and then that's where even the accountability is falling flat.
yeah.
Where sometimes the generated code, they will just blame the AI, saying, "Oh, this is generated by AI. It's just that what I asked, it gave me. I used it." But there is no accountability. Also, that's also going to be a bigger issue to solve in the long run of governance
Yeah,
of how you're going to use AI. Who's
absolutely.
going to have the
And that's also
accountability?
evolving, right? I
Yeah,
think governance, that's a very good point because AI governance is not something which people have understood
yeah.
very well. Even in our company, we don't understand it very well. We still are learning the ropes. We are still evolving,
Mm.
right? We still have to understand how to really implement governance and how people actually use it. And in certain specific smaller companies, it's easier.
Yeah.
But in a company like Indian tech, Indian IT companies, right? They're so huge in size. If you're going to implement Gen AI for 90,000 people or 1 lakh people in India,
Mm.
how do you really enforce governance?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point too, because you don't see the disruption happening in larger organization to that scale, because you don't hear the messaging coming directly saying use this, show productivity. It's never happening. It's coming like, oh, you have this tool to use. Maybe you start using it, see how it works. Maybe it will improve productivity, but make sure that you're following the AI ethics, all
Yeah,
of the things which are involved, right? But somewhere in smaller companies, I'm already hearing they are disrupting in a big way. I
yeah.
also heard something. I connected with somebody in LinkedIn just yesterday, where he had posted about some engineers who are in the range of 22 to 25 years are have created systems which can code 24 bar 7. I don't know what that is. I need to maybe understand more. But they have created those, and there is real disruption happening. where they don't really worry about the ethics, governance, or anything right now. So that could be one reason that we are not hearing what the real disruption is, because for the size and the scale of our organizations, the adoption is very slow.
It is slow, yes.
Yeah.
It's complex as well. To be honest, the learning curve is also quite steep. Um, I mean, to use it productively and to make sure you make best out of it, it is there's a learning curve,
Hmm.
right? It's not like a software engineer can just come and install something and start generating beautiful, highly optimized code as soon as possible, right?
And
It has to be.
again, I have seen that happening, where maybe we are not so much aware. Like there was also a survey like where boomers, millennials adoption is very poor of AI. As soon as they hear it, they're like, no, it's not really productive, I'm not really finding value in that. But they would not have used it to that extent.
Probably
But I
yes.
have also seen maybe engineers who are like 3 or 4 year just um, just into the system, they are using it effectively. And they are even using tools which are not maybe approved by the organization, which is the other part of governance I was saying, right? It's
Yep.
very difficult to control right now, but they are using it really effectively. And then that's the barrier or the bridge that we are seeing, and that will come to the third point of what we will discuss about how ageism and this is involved, where adoption even is a problem, upskilling is a problem for maybe millennials, where they are looking at, oh, it's not for me, I am done with learning myself, it's not maybe for the previous generation to catch up, right? So that is a risk maybe which is right now at least everyone is having over, and maybe touching their 35 to 40 or even beyond, right? So
Yeah.